What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video has been a long time coming. This one is going to be an exciting one. Basically, you see behind me here I have my EK Civic. In today's video, I finally decided to turbo it, so let's get into it. Something going on here doesn't seem quite right, so let's fix that real quick. Bang. So much better. All right, let's get into it. Let's start off with talking about the car a little bit. So this is a D16. It's a non-VTEC. It's a Y4 in New Zealand. It is pretty much bone stock. Got exhaust, intake, whatever, you know, just stock. Okay. For this turbo, I've got all the stuff down here. I'll go through this in a second. I'm going to be leaving the internals of the motor completely stock. I haven't got injectors yet. I have a 550 horsepower rated fuel pump in here, which is plenty more than what I'm going to need. I so far have stock injectors. Later on I may or may not upgrade them depending on if I need to or if something comes up, or we'll just find out. But so it is a pretty standard, a pretty cheap, just a budget build which we're going to be doing here. We've got, you know, just your average log manifold, turbo, external wastegate. I've got the downpipe. I do have a screamer pipe to go off the wastegate, but I'm pretty sure it's a 10-pound spring in there, so I don't think I'm going to be even needing it, but I've lost it. I've got no idea where I've put it, but I'll find it. Intercooler, there needs to be more piping, but I have plenty of miscellaneous parts and bends and hoses, so I'm sure I'll make that work. I've got hangers there. This box here is just completely full of all different sorts of AN10 fittings and lines and T-tacks and all of that. I have an oil pan with a turbo oil return bung welded into it, so I will not have to be drilling into mine. I will just be replacing the pan. Savage gauges, we got boost pressure, oil pressure and air fuel ratio. I have a chipped P28 ECU here. Yeah, so this is basically everything we have here. This is the car, so let's just get into it. And of course, cannot forget the most important thing about the turbo build, the laptop. Because what good would it be spending all this money on a Honda if it has no laptop? Okay, just to start off, I've just put in this side of the intercooler piping. Got it fed through down there. It does have these little brackets. I got two of these, some bolts, sort of little hangers sort of thing. But I'm gonna wait and hang it up. One of the last things I do, because I need everything to be in place before I go drilling holes. So I'm just gonna have this mocked here for now. I don't have anything for the side of the turbo, but once the turbo gets in there, I see what I need, then I can go figure some stuff out. Now I'm just gonna take off the exhaust bolt. Definitely recommend do what I've done yesterday. I came along and I sprayed a bit of penetrate, bit of CRC on each of these bolts, because these are a pain to get off. So definitely, before you do anything, spray these. Makes it so much easier for you. Alright guys, currently underneath the car now. I've undone the two bolts there. There's another two there that are kind of hanging, keeping the exhaust up. And then also, so after you do the manifold bolts down here, you don't have to undo these as long as you do this one, and then this will all just come out as one piece. So let's get these bolts out and let's drop it out. Well, stock exhaust manifold and the wee downpipe has been pulled. I would recommend that you replace your exhaust manifold gasket, but this is a budget build, so we do not care. So this might as well just get a turbo and put it on, mock it up right now, see how it looks. Well, I'll tell you what, that just makes me happy to look at that. And for some reason, this is different to every other turbo. It usually goes under and back up, but I don't even need any extra intercooler pieces. It's all already there, because that just goes bang straight into the compressor housing. So that is perfect. The red and the red look so cool together. I love that. Well, I don't even, so yeah, so I have the downpipe here, which just bang bang, and I've got a little O2 sensor that I can plug into there. But I've just now realizing I only have two of the studs. The other three have all been snapped, so we'll have to do something about that, but we'll worry about that later. Okay, so car's back on the ground. what we've got so far, we've got intercooler, all the boost piping, the turbo, everything all mocked up. So majority of the stuff you can see mocked up. The stuff behind the scenes, like the ECU, injectors, tune and all that, haven't touched any of that, or the oil, all that important stuff haven't touched, but all the stuff you can see, all the cool stuff has been done. So I've just tried to test fit on my bumper, and I've seen that both sides of the intercooler here are a lot worse on this side than this side. Is it's all hitting this back grill here. So I've just had the idea that I'm just gonna just cut off all this, because I think without the kind of grill in there, it could actually look really cool. So I'm just gonna cut pretty much all of it out, and we'll see how it looks. Well, we're behind the bumper now, and I've just finished cutting all this out. Heaps of burnt up rubber and plastics everywhere, but let's see if you can even notice a difference from the front. Nah, that looks good. Could definitely maybe clean up these a little bit, but I'm not fussed for now, so let's see how it looks on the car. Well, we first time managed to cut this almost exactly, it is touching there, but it's still on almost perfect size. It looks really sleek because it's blue. You can't really see it hiding away in there, so it's good if you want to be kind of slippery, but it just does not look aggressive. So I 100% prefer the look with no bumper. Right, let's get cracking to the oil. So on the top of the turbo, we have our oil feed. So this obviously goes into the turbo, giving it the oil that it needs. Obviously you can see a lot has changed since we've last been in the engine. Basically, you do not have to do this, but I am changing my wiring harness because this one is no good. So I've taken out the fuel rail and the intake. So there's a lot of spare room here, so I can get to everything from the top. Whereas usually, if you guys want to do it with your intake in, which is completely fine, you have to go underneath. But you see the oil filter right there, and then this thing just here on top of it is where we need to tap into to get our oil. So I'll show you how to do that. So what you're going to need for the oil is something like this. It doesn't have to be a three-way, it could just be a T or something like this. But basically you're going to pull out this factory oil pressure sensor and then thread this into the block. You're definitely going to need to use some thread tape, some Teflon tape on every connection you do. You got to be using this stuff to stop oil leaks, because that can be quite bad. So you're going to want to put this in. In my case, I am having a oil pressure gauge. So on one of these, I'm going to screw in my oil pressure, aftermarket oil pressure sensor. And then on one of them, I'm going to put back in the stock oil pressure sensor. And the other one, I'm going to put in my turbo oil feed line. So I'm going to have all three of these being used and tapped into the block. So let's do that. Okay, we've threaded in the T fitting, and I've just started to also thread in my turbo oil feed. We will need to put the factory pressure sensor back in, and I will also try and sort out my oil gauge as well. Okay, I've just had to switch a couple of things around on the oil feed setup, because I used to have the turbo feed, it was coming straight out the back, but this is my aftermarket oil pressure gauge sensor. This was just too big to go on either of the sides, because there's this block that usually goes in there. I've switched it so that the feed is just coming off the side. The stock oil pressure sensor is going to go on this side, and then I've got my aftermarket oil pressure gauge coming out of the back. You'll also see I've got my valve cover off at the moment because I'm just painting that, so I'll show you that in a second. Okay, now that the oil feed is pretty much all sorted, I'm gonna drain the oil first out of my sump, and then I'm gonna drop the factory sump so I can put in my aftermarket one with the already welded in oil drain bung. So we're underneath the car now. Also, before you can drop the pan, you do need to take off this little brace bracket sort of thing. So I'm just removing this bracket, and I can see up in there what looks to be heaps of little rocks, little pebbles, and I don't know what else they would be, so that's why I'm thinking they're rocks, but how has there been got rocks up in there? It's so weird. Let's crack this. That was weirdly loose, but oh well. Let's get this out and let's drain out the oil. It was definitely due for an oil change. Now the oil is pretty much drained and the bracket has been removed. We want to go around the top and loosen all of these nuts holding in the sump, and then we'll go around one by one, removing all of them, and then we'll drop out the sump. Also, I would recommend changing the filter at the same time as you're draining the oil, which is what I'm going to do as well. Okay, all of the bolts and nuts holding in the sump have now all been removed. It's being held in by nothing. Both my hands are absolutely filthy. The camera's a bit dirty as well. I've tried to clean it, but everything I'm wearing is all filthy as well, so I can't really get much cleaner, but I'll clean it in a second. So what we're going to do now is going to get just a flathead screwdriver or something and wedge it in between where the sump meets the block. You want to go kind of all the way around and just pry it out a little bit, and it should drop out nice and easy. So when removing the sump, we run into a little problem. We'd undone all this and pried it open, so it's just sitting here now. I've got it sitting on this, but there's this little cover over on this side here, which is restricting this side of the sump from coming out. So we've just got 2 bolts on either side there to drop this out, and then we can pull it out. Dropped out the sump. You want to, all the nuts and bolts that came from the pan as well, these are all disgusting and corroded with oil, so you're going to want to clean these up. You can just wipe them down or spray some degrees on it, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop them in a little container with a little bit of white vinegar and let them soak. We've got a little potion here of white vinegar, so gonna let this sit and let the bolts and nuts get a little bit more free. Okay, so we've just run into a little bit of a dilemma. The bolt holes on the sump I was going to put in, because it has the bung in it, did not line up with my block for some reason. This is a sump from a d16 Y8. Mine's a d16 Y4. I would assume they were the exact same, but apparently they're slightly different and it doesn't line up. So we're somehow going to see if we can drill a hole in my factory sump and put the bung in there. Before you go drilling into the sump, you have to make sure it's free of all this oil, and it is covered in oil. So just start lathering it up with any sort of degreaser or anything inside and out. You have to make sure it's spotless, and you also do not want any oil shavings getting into the pan, because then that will be recirculated through the motor, and that won't end well. Okay, so the bung that was in the other pan that I had was not welded in, which is actually a good thing, because now I can just drill this exact same size hole into my factory, my stock oil sump, and then I'll be able to thread this in, put a whole lot of thread tape around it like what this guy's done to stop leaks, and then we'll be away. Sump here, and I've got you need to get this Christmas tree drill attachment bit so you can drill to any size diameter. I've also got a cloth set inside of the sump here to hopefully restrict the amount of metal shavings that are going to get put into here. So hopefully there'll be none, but there will be a couple, but as long as we can get them back out, it'll be alright. So the first level. We've got the hole to the perfect size now, so you're going to want to go get your Teflon, your thread tape, and put it around the thread there. Because this is quite a large bung, and it's quite important as well, you don't want to be quite generous with this, because this is arguably probably the most prone spot for oil to be leaking out of, as it is straight down from the turbo, so it is hot, and the viscosity rating of it is a lot higher than a lot of other places in the engine. So apply the Teflon tape quite generously, and then we'll thread that in. Right, oil pan is clear. You don't want to have any gunk in this. This is clean. And now let's get this back up to where it belongs. All right, the sump is back in. We're going to tighten down all these bolts, and then we're going to put back in the flywheel cover here, that little cover, and then we're going to put back in that bracket. Let's chuck all that back up. New filter in as well. I'm going to wait pretty much until the car is near ready to start before I actually put the oil in the top, just in case I need to drop the sump back out for some reason, like we mess something up, or in case I have to pull the filter, or if I need to play around with any of my oil pressure or oil feeds, I need to tap that back out of the block. So I'm just going to wait until just before I start it, before I actually put the oil in, just so that way I don't have to redo the whole process. Just got the downpipe mocked up as well, and I'm just tightening up these bolts here. My one literally ends right there, and it doesn't have like a flange to be able to connect it on. So for the first wee while, I'm just going to be driving the car around just like this with the ending right there. So it's probably going to be super loud, but oh well. And eventually I'll weld up and get a exhaust all the way back to the rear bumper. But for now, this will have to do. Also, I've gone and got an O2 sensor, wired in that into the gauge, wired in my oil pressure wires into the gauge. I've also put a little screamer pipe on. This should be either just going somewhere where it's not going to make anything hot, or back into the exhaust. However, the angle of the one I had just went straight out, so I've just decided to cut it there for the meantime. Make sure this is tucked out the way so this won't burn. Okay, well, it's been a couple of days since the last update, but basically with the new harness that I have, I've found out that my idle air control valve sensor and my alternator are different. So we were just going to splice some stuff, make it work, but my intake didn't even have an air temp sense on it. But the man James EG5 has came in clutch with this, what's it, d16 A7
God's
intake and an alternator. So obviously I'm gonna have to clean this up, make it all sparkly, and then we're gonna put it in, and then it's not far off until we're going to be ready to start this thing. And I've also plumbed in, I should say, the boost gauge sensor. So all the gauges have all the sensors all plugged in correctly, I hope. And I'll show you what I've got going on inside. Inside now, gauges are all set up, and look how cool this is. Ready? That's sick. The adjustable boost controller has just arrived, so I'm going to show you how to install that as well. First line you want to have just coming off the compressing housing of the turbo. Have that come up here, tucked out of the way. I want to have my boost controller over in this corner, so I've just routed my line to here. And you want to plug this in. You can see the arrow pointing towards the wastegate, which means you're going to want to put it in like that way there. And then this line here just continues to the bottom port of the wastegate there. Okay, so you can see I've got port coming off the nipple from the turbo over here into the boost controller, back out of the wastegate side, follow around to the bottom port of the wastegate, and now I've just put a T-fitting in here, and then I'm just going to put a bit of vacuum hose just from here just to here for my boost gauge. Okay, so right now I have my fuel rail and all the fuel lines, everything's all plugged back in. Obviously that would be on there, but I just unplugged it. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be putting in our fuel pressure regulator. This is not a must-have, but is definitely a high recommend going for a turbo build. So we're just going to take this off, and what you need to have is this little adaptation sort of piece just here. You can literally just search up D16 fuel pressure regulator adapter, and then all the lines and everything will come up that you're going to need. Right, screw on that adaptation plate, disconnect this whole piece from the factory return line. Now we have the port coming out the fuel rail and the return line. So the blue piece there, you're going to want to put on the end of this hose. It goes in and then drains out the bottom onto that factory line. And then this vacuum hose on the top, just want to plug it into here. It can just be any vacuum port, but you just go just here because it's just right there. It's the easiest one. Look, here we go. Fuel pressure regulator is in, as easy as that. It was like a 2-minute job. So you got your adapter, hose goes to the top port, factory drain down the bottom, vacuum line into the manifold, and then I've just got mine zip tied to this vacuum line here as well, just sitting there. It's actually really sturdy where it is for the moment, so bang, just like that. All right, so the distributor has just arrived. Here we have the distributor, and this is the final step to getting it running. We've got everything sorted, all the oil feed, return line I've just done before as well, fuel pressure regulator in, boost tap in, everything is good to go. We're just going to put in this distributor, and then we're going to be ready to start it. We're about to try start it right now. Dizzy's in, everything's back together. This video has been going on for way too long though, so If you want to see the startup and taking some people with some drive, some reactions, get some tuning in, get some rolling anti-lag, all that, there will be another video posted on my channel now. So go and have a look at that right now. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.